Thanks, everybody. Let's give a round of applause to Riley as well as the kind of the MC for the week. I don't think anyone's called him out yet. As well as the UCSD and the Quantum Institute here. It's been great to have us. A great venue here. I see there's some people hanging around till the end, so thank you all for continuing to come to the talks. Being a vendor sponsor, I want to emphasize the fact that I think coming and sponsoring this Quantum California initiative is important. We have a large presence in Santa Monica and LA, as well as an office in San Francisco. We have a lot of collaboration with a lot of entities in California. I grew up in California. I live in Arizona now, but definitely have a sense of belonging here and want to see this state really prosper, I think, in the upcoming quantum era. And so we went through a lot of, I think, technical talks this week or the past 2 days, focusing on a lot of the amazing work different organizations are doing across California. I'm going to shift the conversation a little bit away from that technical depth and talk a little bit more about what we all can be doing together, working with the state of California and enhancing these collaborative agreements and projects to really figure out how do we accelerate, right? I think that's the key goal of coming here today and engaging with the state is figuring out what are those blockers, what's preventing a faster adoption at a variety of different levels within California to make sure that this state becomes a leading figure in the global kind of quantum economy, right? Just like it has in semiconductor over the past several decades. So a little less on the technical depth, but we'll talk about some pragmatic views of what we all can do together. And I will shamelessly plug some software products along that way as we go. So just to start, what is Q-Control and how does this kind of fit into the quantum industry? We've been around since about 2017, really been the kind of picks and shovels quantum software provider. I saw someone else, I think it was Quantum Design, use the picks and shovels nomenclature earlier. We really focus specifically on software and how do we use these tools to enable quantum technology at both the quantum computing and the quantum sensing application layers. And so over the past almost a decade now, closing in on that company history, we've been able to engage globally with a lot of different entities from different governments, commercial organizations, universities and academia and labs. And definitely you see this growing concept of kind of ecosystem engagement, right? So if you look across the planet and in the UK, they have the NQCC, in Israel and with some of our other sponsors here in QM, they have the IQCC. Colorado has Elevate Quantum and some broader ecosystem built around there, where we actually just helped launch a platform to help drive commercialization in that state. We're an Australian company and we see what's going on with that government dynamic and how things are evolving in that ecosystem. Japan, we're heavily involved with the Riken supercomputer and adoption of an IBM system. And then everything going on in Delft, we work with a lot of the providers coming out of that ecosystem. So just kind of pointing out to the fact that we see a lot of these types of operations picking up globally, right? There's clearly a global race to quantum, leading the quantum advantage narrative and owning as much of that kind of progress through a specific ecosystems to help that progress and help deliver the significant value that quantum computing will eventually deliver. And so before I go through what we could do to help California grow in that space, I first want to kind of mention, where are we in terms of this kind of progression? As we saw, there's a lot of projects going on, different research efforts, looking at different problem statements that all have a lot of compelling promise. And I think what we kind of emphasize at Q-Control is we're right on the doorstep of really seeing tremendous growth and how all of these different applications can really use quantum at more and more sophisticated levels of computation. And so one thing we announced a couple weeks ago now at IBM Think is this first kind of example of practical quantum advantage as being a really major step toward eventual kind of broader quantum utility. And I'm not going to go into all the technical details or a debate on the technical aspect of what is a practical quantum advantage, but generally speaking, it's how are we running a problem of known value at a scale that is meaningful and challenging, right? So we were able to look at this simulation of the Fermi-Hubbard model, and using 120 qubits, run something that reduced a practical workload of industry value across material science, superconducting, energy transmission, and others, and reduce the computational time from 100 hours to 2 minutes, getting the same level of simulation fidelity, right? So a lot of the talks I saw this week are running problems of a similar vein, right? And the gentleman from Oak Ridge who was just talking as well, and I think in a couple other discussions, there's definitely a concept of how do we take larger problem statements, and though we can't run all of it in quantum today, there's a practical advantage of breaking that down, finding quantum sub workloads that can be run, and then through software, which is where we come into play, we get the best possible performance out of the hardware that's available today. And as we grow from, this was done on 120 qubits, but as we go from that to 200 to 300 and beyond, and all the hardware vendors that some of them here, but across the world, have these pretty aggressive roadmaps of how we're going to have much larger systems in a pretty near-term time frame. And so when you combine that with the fact that we're delivering actual practical value now, there's only a matter of time before this quantum race really heats up, and people need to be positioned, and ecosystems like California need to be prepared on how they're going to exist in that dynamic. And so when we look at California, right, what is the goal of kind of the ecosystem and the funding of what we're here to talk about? And it's really about bringing stakeholders together to advance both the technology and drive adoption. So I kind of think about these things as kind of the supply and the demand side of the quantum industry and the quantum market, right? How does the infrastructure work with, all of California's kind of foundational assets? I think if you look at any location or entity in the world, California probably has the number one, highest level of native assets. When you look across the quantum companies who are either headquartered or have an office here, all the universities, UCSD and others, Berkeley, UCLA, all these others that are contributing, both PhD candidates and students, as well as the research that they drive through their labs into the ecosystem, the national labs that are attached to the state, all of the big tech that already exists here from decades of semiconductor and software organizations. And then as the government kind of pointed out as well yesterday, independently, it's like the fourth or fifth biggest economy in the world, right? So the application space of where quantum can drive value is one of the biggest potentials for value extraction on the planet. So when you add all these things together, there's no reason that through some better collaboration and working with the California government to figure out how do we streamline that collaboration and unblock some of the maybe commercial challenges that are native to a new technology with a lot of startup organizations, there's no reason California shouldn't have a very leading voice and contribution to quantum advancement. And I break this down into two kind of key topics here in terms of what do we do to deploy quantum infrastructure? And I'll talk a little about what that means and the role of software within that infrastructure to make it effective, which has a contribution to how is California and the companies within really driving advancements in quantum technology leadership, that kind of being the supply side, making the products and the computers ready for use. But that then transitions into the supply side, the demand side. How are we then empowering quantum activation? How are we getting this globally recognized economy and all the companies and use cases within it to learn how to use quantum? And this can't wait until 5 years from now when we have these full, large, fault-tolerant computers. That enablement needs to start now, right? Not having the proper demand pull through on a technology that's building up supply can create a very significant imbalance where the users are not ready to absorb the technology as it becomes available, which is not good for the overall economics of that market. And so it's absolutely critical that as these systems grow and become online, and even though there isn't a clear quantum advantage for it today, it doesn't mean that we can't be pushing quantum activation. And this is where, again, working with the government to figure out in California how to provide incentives for the state, either at the ports and within businesses, to start quantum POCs and evaluating how do we start using quantum and start seeing how can it drive an impact to our business, because this is coming soon. And California as an ecosystem not only wants to build it, but use it and create a quantum-powered economy, right? Continuing to boost what it's done so far in the past several decades. And so when we look at kind of these two categories, we can talk a little bit about what is quantum infrastructure and what is quantum activation. So on the infrastructure side, at a base level, we need hardware, right? We need systems that are available for a variety of different reasons across the state, so people can come together to collaborate at different levels, whether that's on low-level R&D, software development like we do, or some of the activation level stuff on running actual algorithms. That hardware and systems is really the backbone of, I think, this entire initiative and how we can move faster together. So deploying multiple systems that support different use cases like I just went through, but then aligning those systems to the right goals and incentives, right? I think from the California office, it's really all about job creation as the end goal and economic stimulation. But in order to do that, I think there's a quantum specific scope that needs to first be identified. And how are we just making quantum win in the state and expanding the industry in the state? The jobs and the economic opportunity from that come as quantum wins, not by looking at one specific project and saying how many jobs is that one lab going to generate. It's how does solving the technical and commercial barriers to quantum advancement contribute to long-term job growth as California maintains a leadership position in quantum as it deploys. And then finally, it's how are people accessing that system, and how is that accessibility not a blocker to its primary intent, right? Making sure that the infrastructure operators are aware of how to run these systems, remove any technical friction of how to access systems via the cloud or if you need to go to the labs in person, and then right-sizing the financial and policy hurdles for who and how to access them. Like how do you apply for access? How much does it cost to rent it for a week or a day? And how do you submit those proposals to maintain that access? So across all of this, there's just a lot of, I think, planning and coordination between the university entities, the companies, and the state to figure out this deployment process. And then where I'll plug in a little bit of what Q-Control does is what we've seen globally is as you deploy infrastructure, it needs to be properly matched with software, what we call infrastructure software, to make sure that hardware doesn't turn into some operational overhead, right? It needs to add value, not detract value from everybody's goals. And through infrastructure software, we're able to automate a lot of the low-level quantum complexity from that system and provide a much more usable hardware system for the ecosystem, right? So when you have some quantum computer that's deployed, you maybe have people who are doing low-level research who want to come in and access it at the controller level and do some low-level experimentation. That's great. They can do that, right away based off the solutions that are there. But as you add in levels of abstraction, like for Boulder Opal, that's an automated calibration solution where it can bring up a system in a number of hours, removing days of operation to bringing it online, and provide a more of a bare metal QPU where it's ready to run algorithms, all the gates are tuned up and maintained at some peak level of gate fidelity, and now someone who wants to do some sort of algorithmic or error suppression or error correction research can come in, not worry about that low-level calibration task, and just focus on having a resource that accelerates their specific goal because software is handling what's behind the scene. And then we have another product called FireOpal, which does one more layer of abstraction where it automatically runs your circuits and applies some error suppression to get you the best possible algorithmic results. So that's the tool that was used in the beginning for that practical quantum advantage. And we can take that tool and deploy it on any hardware backend. It's kind of got a modality agnostic error suppression pipeline. And so that allows users who actually just want to run systems, a lot of the industry users who want to get more familiar with the problem statements that they can run and the workloads they can run. They just want to build their circuits and run it. They don't want to have to hire expertise and learn how to map their circuits down to specific qubits. And so by providing these levels of abstraction, it gives potential users of different use cases the right level of performance and functionality on a system. And again, it prevents that system from turning into more of a resource drain where someone has to manage that manually, and turns it into a net kind of a valuable asset that allows people to access it and use it for its intended purpose. And so it's only through kind of this infrastructure software capability paired with the underlying hardware that you get this level of stability. And that's critical as the state and other entities invest a lot of money in this infrastructure. We want to make sure it adds value and is usable and not just spending more money on that low level. I know I'm running low on time. I'm going a little overboard here. This is just a view of kind of the Boulder Opal perspective. And again, using a software that brings up a system to some consistent level of gate fidelity, right? And the only way you can run circuits and do higher level error correction or any other activity is if you have stable gates across the entire device. And so by using an automated calibration solution like Boulder Opal, you get these consistent high performance state preparations without having a whole bunch of manual resources tapped into it. Same thing with Fire Opal, providing that stable, consistent access to circuit execution and error suppression so that the users of the devices, as you go from infrastructure to activation, don't have to worry about all of that low-level detail. We have a lot of researchers in here working on the actual problems that will be solved with quantum. That's a whole full-time job. That's where they're spending their time, right? We want to provide this tools underneath the quantum computer to then allow them to just run their circuits, and they don't have an extra barrier to executing on their research that's not necessarily in their core skill set or just where they want to spend their time. And then finally, as we go from infrastructure to activation, we have another product called Black Opal, which is about quantum education. So when we start talking about workforce development, it's how do we use tools like Black Opal to create curated learning paths for different users and stakeholders in this quantum adoption, right? What do the technicians need to know? What do people who work in the hardware manufacturing businesses need to know? What do the executives of the industry users need to know about quantum? What do the researchers in those industries need to know about quantum? And so creating these curated learning paths to figure out how do we bridge non-quantum people into the quantum ecosystem, and then use tools like Fire Opal to really activate them into starting to run circuits. This is really the key to that demand side progress and giving them the tools to get started now. And within Fire Opal, we have these ideas of a solver as well, where it converts some predefined objective function into a quantum circuit in key use case areas to just run on build the circuit and then run through our error suppression engine to run on the hardware. So again, it's working with these industry users to figure out how do we act as a liaison of getting them into quantum. They already have these objective functions. Different organizations already know the problems that are straining their businesses and that they need to solve that are too complex on current hardware. By breaking those down and figuring out what are those objective functions and then processing them through these solvers, we get them onto quantum quicker, and having those successes at the industry level is critical to maintaining quantum momentum and keeping this conversation going and not getting it out of just the purely academic and research phase. And then my last slide, so I think I'm a little over. So again, it's a long journey to get from where we are today as kind of disparate projects and kind of everyone's got unbelievable ideas and proof points and building blocks to get all that together and really power the quantum economy of the future, which this is our view, where you have quantum always living alongside classical compute. There's a layer of infrastructure software kind of stitching all this together, automating a lot of the low-level complexity, providing a virtualized or an abstracted concept of a quantum resource to higher-level users, and then training them at the quantum application level on how to use quantum and get them involved in the ecosystem. Getting to this kind of ideal end state where everything is working together as one seamless resource like we see with AI and HPC today. This is going to take a long time and a lot of collaboration. And I think by organizations working together with the state of California to figure out how do we prioritize those fundings to unblock areas that maybe the commercial dynamics can't overcome because we're startups and there's a lot of different priorities at play. I think there's a lot of planning and opportunity to figure out how do we use infrastructure and activation projects to accelerate this end goal. And then Q-Control software obviously can help facilitate a lot of that final delivery. But regardless, I think the plan in place is valid outside of the software solutions we build. So thank you.